On that particular day, our daughter and her spouse joined us for a cookout in the garden. The smell of grilled meat permeated the bright sunshine. "Oh, we're running out of beer," said Dexter. "Vivienne, can you please grab some more and store them in the refrigerator from the shed?" "I got it. 4 or 5 bottles," I answered. "Hey, Orion, can you help Mom just chill as many beers as you can?" my daughter Lila asked her husband. "Of course," Orion said with a smile, and he followed me to the shed at the back of the garden. The shed was not too ancient. At the moment it contained only a few cardboard beer crates. Orion was behind me and grabbed my shoulders, attempting to make me sit down as soon as I opened the door and attempted to take one of the boxes out of the poorly lighted rear. I turned to instinctively glance at Orion's face and noticed his strangely distressed expression. I was suddenly filled with terror, believing that he was about to assault me. Hello, what's happening?" Startled, I let out a yell. Orion mumbled, "I'm sorry, please just bear with me for a moment," with a rather terrified expression. "What?" I questioned, perplexed. Orion added, "I need to confirm something," his normally kind grin giving way to an uncharacteristically serious stare. Together, we then saw an incredible sight. Vivienne is my name. It was one of those absolutely beautiful early spring days. After a brief illness, my spouse had died away and was now in paradise. My daughter, Leela, and I had been living a humble but peaceful life together for a number of years after his death. Me and my kid were the only two there. Then I got to know a man named Dexter through a buddy. Dexter shared my late husband's age and even certain physical characteristics. Dexter and I were just close friends at first, but as time went on, we began to feel something for one another. But any time I saw myself laughing while strolling beside Dexter, I couldn't resist feeling incredibly guilty. Dexter smiled gently and replied, "There's no hurry. I'll hold out for however long it takes." I was pulled to his kindness as he went a bit ahead of me. Nevertheless, I was still having trouble letting go of my spouse, who had left this life. 7 years have gone since my husband's death. I assumed responsibility for his burial and altar after seeing his relatives for the first time in a long time. Without looking into my eyes, his sister softly put her hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Thank you for everything." I smiled and dropped my head to contain my wellspring of tears, fearing that I may never again visit my husband's grave. I made the decision to remarry Dexter a few months later. I started again by getting rid of all my furnishings and clothes when we moved into a new house. I believed that Dexter would be harmed if I kept any keepsakes from my first marriage. Leela was a little apprehensive at first, but with time she warmed up to Dexter. Leela acclimated quite fast, since she and Dexter had been friends even before our marriages. Leela was 15 years old. She began going out with friends and wearing a little more makeup at this vulnerable age. She unexpectedly started to depend on Dexter for spending money quite soon. Leela and I had never lived well in our former life as mother and daughter, and I was unable to provide her with all she desired. Unlike me, Dexter was kind to Leela, even if I had to be stern with money. Whenever she claimed to be going out with friends, he would give her money without any questioning. Dexter seemed worried when I subsequently warned him about this, saying, "I'm sorry, but it feels like money is the only way I can connect with Leela right now." Dexter continued to be exceptionally kind to Leela in ways other than financial ones. I felt pleased for her as though he were treating her like a princess. Dexter was making every effort to love me and Leela. My wedding ring, my only remembrance of my deceased spouse, was carefully stored in the back of my closet. I would sometimes pull it out to look at it, but that started to feel weird too. I apologized but wanted to move on, so I mailed the ring and a brief message to my late husband's parents. Could I really be happy? I desired happiness from the bottom of my heart, but I didn't know how. After a while, Leela and Dexter grew so close that she never left his side. Although this gave me great joy, there were also some worries. "Hey, Dad, I really want to get this new bag, but I don't have enough pocket money. What actions should I take?" Leela asked. "Which one? What is the appearance of it?" With much anticipation, Dexter looked at Leela's phone screen in response. I glanced at the screen, seeing a bag made by a reputable company. Even I was able to identify it. Dexter looked at the pricing as he navigated through the phone and scratched his head, looking a little disturbed. "It's pretty expensive, but, well, okay, it's for you," he responded. "Really? Happy days. Many thanks, Dad." Leela shouted and embraced Dexter, who grinned proudly. Leela's perception of money has steadily deteriorated since my marriage. It might have been a response to our previous simple existence. Knowing that Dexter would gladly buy everything, she had began to ask for items. "Leela, don't spend so much money carelessly." "Mom, it's okay. I'm not asking." "All right, Dad." Leela responded as she glanced at Dexter, and the two of them chuckled together. "I will wed a charming and compassionate man like Dad," Leela vowed. Dexter smiled broadly, a grin spreading over his wrinkled face. After obtaining her word, Leela went back to her room to continue her studies. She had already begun assiduously preparing for the entrance examinations, since she intended to attend nursing school following high school. Instead of turning on the TV at home, I put a little radio in the kitchen and left it there so as not to interfere with Leela's studies. Our happiness was abundant in our lives. I was so ecstatic that I may have forgotten that my first spouse had died. On occasion, though, memories would flash back when music from my youth played on the radio. My chest would constrict in response to the melodies and words, almost causing me to cry. "Take off your depressing expression," Dexter would respond, totally missing the message. "It's just a bag," and I would slyly smirk. I made a mental note to stop giving Leela money every time she asked. Dexter would frequently charge some costs to the firm as business expenses because he had begun his business at a young age. I warned him that this wasn't exactly commendable and that it may have an impact on the company's finances. But Dexter didn't stop ignoring my worries. As the days passed, I told myself, honestly, he's too soft. After graduation, Leela entered nursing school with success and began living independently. She was a dedicated nurse. Leela started dating after turning 25 and ultimately made the decision to wed Orion, a man about her own age. I tried not to reveal my astonishment when Leela presented Orion to us. Leela used to remark all the time, "I'm going to marry a handsome man," but Orion wasn't very attractive, even though he was a pleasant young man with a sweet smile. Orion came from a rich household and wore clothes that showed off his well-educated background. Leela and Orion came to see us a lot after they got married. Dexter and I had always appreciated Orion's kindness, and I was very pleased and delighted that my daughter had found such a wonderful husband. Dexter proposed that we host a cookout in our backyard one day. A few birds were singing in the seemingly endless sky, and the weather was pleasant. Since early in the morning, Dexter had been excitedly getting ready. He was pleasantly conversing with Leela while skillfully cooking the meat. Orion spent some time scanning the area in an attempt to find the birds chirping overhead, but eventually he gave up and poured himself a drink. "Oh, we're almost out of beer," said Dexter. "Vivian, can you please grab some more and store them in the refrigerator from the shed?" "Sure, 4 or 5 bottles," I inquired. Leela responded with, "Hey, Orion, can you help Mom chill as many beers as we have?" Orion said, "Of course," and grinned as he led me to the shed located behind the yard. There were only a few piled beer cartons inside the shed, which was not very old. Orion was behind me, and he grabbed me roughly and attempted to make me sit on the ground as I opened the door and attempted to take a box out of the poorly lighted rear of the shed. "Hey, what are you doing?" I was ready to speak out when I suddenly cried out in shock. With a somewhat agitated expression, Orion said, "I'm sorry, just give me a minute." "What?" I inquired. He responded, "I need to make sure of something." He peered out the shed door to survey the area before I could ask him what he wanted to double-check. Today's weather was pleasant, and the garden's blue grass brilliantly reflected the sun. We were presumably invisible to Dexter and Lila in the dark shed. I was watching Dexter and Lila from a distance when I noticed Lila stepping forward and resting on Dexter's arm. She laughed merrily and pressed her cheek on his upper arm. There was a little sound of their voices. The squawk of birds in the skies reverberated through the shed, distorting their sounds. Orion was staring at them. Is he envious of Lila and Dexter's great relationship? I think he saw my accidental smile and pointed, saying, "Look." Lila took a couple quick looks around before putting her arm around Dexter's. Dexter appeared a little surprised, but he also took a quick look around before cheerfully welcoming Lila. There was something more going on between them than merely a parent-child dynamic. The chirping of birds stopped. I could easily hear Dexter and Lila's voices coming from a distance since there was no breeze and no sound of insects. Lila added, "Orion hasn't noticed at all, despite it being faint. Isn't it amusing that this—" "Well, Vivienne hasn't either," Dexter said. "Typically, people don't envision something like this. But this kind of relationship is exciting and fun, right?" Lila said again. I was dumbfounded, not understanding a word they were saying as I listened to their chat. Lila reached into her pocket for a clear bag containing powdered medication, which she carefully stirred into the cups Orion and I had been sipping from. "Did she just put something in our glasses?" I inquired. "That's probably a sleeping pill," Orion retorted. "She recently went to the psychiatrist, but she didn't inform me." Pills for sleeping. A trip to the psychiatrist that Orion was unaware of. I was unable to understand it all. But what was I to do when I found out she'd added sleeping drugs to our drinks? Orion remarked, "It would be weird to stay here any longer. Come with me, but hold on to those glasses." Orion and I then pretended to be ignorant and went back to Lila and Dexter. Lila was acting a little strange, always staring at my glass. It was startling to consider that she may be attempting to get me to consume some weird substance. The discovery made me dizzy, as I felt betrayed by the girl I had reared. I apologized, but I believe I've had a little too much sun. I remarked, "I need to take a little break inside." "Oh, okay, I'll take care of the cleanup," was Dexter's response. "You ought to get some rest." I lay on the room's bed and looked up at the ceiling in blank gaze. She added a sleeping tablet to our drinks? Why? Additionally, Dexter and Lila's intimacy appeared odd. My brain pounded as I struggled to believe that something could actually be happening, while still accepting the notion that something may be happening. I lay down for a time before drifting off to sleep. I woke up as nightfall drew near and walked outside to the garden, where the clearing had already taken place. Orion and Lila appeared ready to go. Orion gazed at me as if he wanted to say something, but he slowly looked away and said nothing. "Are you feeling better now?" inquired Dexter. Dexter, as usual, expressed worry for me when Orion and Lila left. I faked an odd grin because everything about him, his words, his voice, everything, sounded false. "You still have a sickly appearance. Would you like me to prepare dinner?" As he rolled up his sleeves and dug through the fridge, Dexter offered. I remembered Lila adding the sleeping medication to my drink earlier. While he was doing it, I pushed Dexter aside, declared, "I'll cook," and whipped up a fast dinner. I could not possibly eat anything he cooked at this moment. I was afraid the food and beverages in the house may be poisoned, so I avoided touching them for a few days. These ideas made me suspicious of hidden cameras or eavesdropping, which made living in my own house more challenging. Orion sent me a message on my phone one day. It seems that he had discussed the possibility of the sleeping tablets with his parents. Orion's parents offered to give me a temporary place to stay since they were worried about my safety. I feel like I'm living with Dexter right now and going insane. Thank you so much for the opportunity, I answered. Orion responded, You are welcome to stay for as long as you need to. It's a relative's cottage that won't be used for a while. I'd also like to talk to my parents about this. Orion seemed sad when he spoke on the phone. It made sense. It was, no, I didn't want to think about it at the moment, and his wife may be having an affair with him. I lied to Dexter afterwards, telling him I was asked to their cottage by a friend. I told him my buddy had encouraged me to relax there because I had previously informed him about the headaches I had been having since the cookout. Dexter answered, You mean a cottage? That has a pleasant tone. You ought to go easy on yourself. While you're away, I might ask Lila over for supper. I had shivers from the wave of disgust he sparked, all in a nonchalant tone devoid of any indication of remorse. A few days later, I went to the relative's cottage at the address Orion had given me. I got to the station, changed trains, and Orion drove me to my car. I apologize for forcing you to travel so far, he murmured, sincerely bending his head. His generosity in setting up a safe haven for me caused something within of me to stir. There were several holiday cottages in the neighborhood, neatly arranged amid the trees, appearing to be vacant yet in good condition. Among these woods stood the cottage. At the doorway, Orion's parents were there to greet me. I had seen them twice previously at the wedding introduction, and now this was my third time seeing them. Leela had told me that they were really well off, which frightened me a little. I bent down and thanked you for giving me a place to stay. Thank you so much. Sorry to jump right into it, but could we continue this conversation inside? Was Orion's father's response. As soon as we entered the cottage, we had a conversation with Orion's parents. Orion's parents were already aware that Leela had added sleeping drugs to our drinks. He said that he found it puzzling that Lila's lavish spending habits have surpassed his own income since their marriage. As a mother, hearing that hurt me. Orion stated, We also need to make it clear where Lila is getting her money. My parents want to witness Dexter's response when they suggest giving his firm a contribution. Are you okay with us moving forward in this manner? Observe how he responds. Gave me the creeps. What precisely were we expecting to find? What was in store for us when we made this move? Orion noticed my uncertainty, met my eyes, and grinned. He said, This might be much ado about nothing, but wouldn't it be worth it to ensure we can live in peace again? As our gazes locked, let's take a little chance. Orion's comments couldn't help but make me grin. A lot of fuss over nothing. No, it was not the case at all. We wanted to get our responses closer to certainty by confirming what we already suspected. I was apprehensive about staying at Orion's cottage forever when I regained my composure after a few days there. I made the decision to go back home. A few weeks later, Orion's parents made official contact with Dexter's business and offered a contribution in exchange for financial help. Dexter and Lila were thrilled that the offer was promptly accepted because of their affluence. I witnessed their enjoyment in silence, not bothering to double-check the financing specifics. At home, being inside had gotten a little too uncomfortable. I thus started going for daily walks. There was a wheat field just in front of the home, with green stalks that extended as far as the eye could see. As I strolled down the seldom-used asphalt road, I saw the far-off birds soaring overhead. Following the request for funding, Dexter and Lila started living opulently. Dexter bought a premium car under the pretense of a work car, believing he had already received the cash. Leela, on the other hand, enjoyed lavish costs, such as manicures and spa services. It was clear that their continuing expenditure, despite their declining savings, was motivated by Dexter's innocent belief that money would magically appear. We planned a dinner gathering one day to talk about the finances. Orion's parents and Leela and I, as well as both of our couples, met at our house. Dexter made a lot of bows to get the respect of Orion's parents. "I really can't thank Orion enough," Dexter said. "Leela frequently expresses her happiness at having married such a beautiful guy." Dexter kept flattering Orion's parents, but they didn't smile back. Rather, they covered the table with a few documents. Thinking they had anything to do with the contribution, Dexter joyfully exclaimed, "Thank you," and started going through them. His face became pale in an instant. Orion's dad stated, "Upon conducting a due diligence review of your company for the funding, we uncovered some shocking facts." Dexter's face started to perspire as he went over the paperwork. The documents exposed two primary concerns: proof of Dexter and Lila's connection and a tax probe about the charges claimed as business expenditures. I felt like hiding my face in shame when I saw evidence that my daughter had slept with my husband. Lila's jewelry, spa visits, and other pleasures had all had their costs fraudulently declared as company expenditures, which led to back taxes. Furthermore, Orion's father said, "We cannot provide funding to a company engaged in such fraudulent activities." Dexter stumbled, "But this can't be." Dexter upset himself and spilled his tea. Leela, not far away, got up shakily and used her quivering hands to clean up the debris. Orion firmly declared, "Leela, I'm divorcing you, and I'll be claiming damages." "What? How come? What does damages imply to you?" Leela answered, startled, "You betrayed me with your actions. Isn't that clear as day?" Orion looked at me and continued, "And Vivienne, too." Dexter looked from the paperwork to me, horror etched in his eyes. "I'll also be divorcing Dexter and claiming damages, of course," I said. "What topic are you discussing? That's not conceivable," Dexter stammered, letting the papers fall to the ground. Leela approached Dexter, her lips trembling as she pointed at Orion with a terrified expression on her face. No, it's untrue. Orion was the one who cheated. Mom and Orion." Leela continued to try to place the blame and offered incoherent justifications that sounded like screaming all the way to the very end. There was strong evidence against Dexter and Leela, so there was no way out, no matter how hard they tried to justify themselves. Dexter eventually lowered his shoulders in surrender and started talking calmly. Dexter said that after getting to know Leela, he recognized there was no love involved in their connection. At first, he turned Leela down when she came to him looking for money, but in the end, he assessed my advancing years and waning attractiveness against Leela's increasingly feminine features and made a determination. "I also identify as a male. Not even blood ties bind us. I was unable to refuse," stated Dexter. On the day of the cookout, Leela was the one who proposed adding sleeping tablets to our beverages. She was going to drug Orion and me, strip off, share a bed, and take pictures so she could sue for damages. How superficial of them, beyond disdain. I regarded them with icy eyes. "I really apologize. Please forgive me," pleaded Dexter. "I implore you. I also apologize so much. Orion and I don't want to end our relationship." Leela started crying. Without saying anything, I just observed as the two of them bowed their heads. I ran out of words. How am I supposed to forgive? Leela, who was getting restless with my lack of response, at last lifted her face and yanked Dexter by the sleeve. "You are to blame. How is this possible to occur? Next week is when my credit card payments are due. What steps will you take to address this?" "What? By purchasing items on your own. What do you mean? Confused, Dexter inquired. I've been using credit card loans to pay off my losses at slots, and I'm broke. Leela let out a scream. What the hell are we going to do? Dexter responded with a shout. What they meant by a scene was precisely this state of disarray. Leela persisted in her aggressive conduct, yanking at Dexter's clothing and hair while he frantically attempted to stop her yelling. The neighbors must be able to hear all of this yelling. If it turned out that they were parent and kid, one couldn't live here with normal nerves, even if it was a matter of duty. I think it was the same for me. The idea that I would no longer be able to enjoy the view outside the window made me feel a bit lonely. Leela then got a divorce from Orion and relocated far away. She became involved in the nightlife, but things didn't work out for her. She drowned in drink and racked up more debt. Dexter paid a sizable amount of alimony, and his business failed as a result of debt collectors pursuing him. He was apparently living as a homeless person and hiding from his creditors when he vanished in a state akin to running away at night. After divorcing Leela, Orion used his unsuccessful marriage as a lesson and found a suitable partner. Dexter sent me an alimony payment. Though his firm went bankrupt and debt collectors were pursuing it, it was unclear how he managed to prepare such a big amount of alimony. However, at the very end, he showed some kind of accountability. Upon selling our property and divorcing Dexter, I made the decision to move back in with my parents. I had a lot on my mind as I flew back to my hometown. I was deceived by my own daughter, remarried, divorced again, and lost my first spouse to sickness. I pondered how I ought to approach my parents now. My boyhood house was surrounded by large wheat fields. I strolled around the extended patch of asphalt while towing my bulky bag. Early summer was coming, and the temperature was warm and muggy. My folks greeted me warmly and without doubt when I came home. Why hadn't my aging parents asked me anything? I pondered. Did they have pity on me? They didn't, however, handle me like I was delicate. They readily accepted me. I knew I needed to take a second look at my life as I looked out at the serene countryside. I believe that I have laid a solid foundation for my life because of my father's assistance in getting me a job at the nearby agricultural cooperative. I've gotten along well with Orion's parents ever since. We don't get together very frequently, but when we do, we occasionally eat dinner together. A few years after I moved back in with my parents, an unforeseen event occurred in the spring. My late husband's wedding ring was sitting on the desk. As I picked up the ring and held it in my palm, I felt a little uneasy. My mother entered from the kitchen, her back bowed, and cleaned the table as I stood there dumbfounded. His folks used to visit us a long time ago. They stated, "Vivienne, they wanted you to have this." I was stunned as I stood there. The wheat fields extended beyond the window, framed by a deep blue sky. There was a bird that kept chirping, like it was saying, "I am here." I went off on my bicycle, crying as I placed my backpack over my shoulder. I carried on, beads of perspiration forming on my forehead, through the deserted wheat fields. How should I go moving forward? I'm not sure, but I'm going to keep going. I'll reserve my grievances until a time when I've fully